So these people, any doctors who are prepared to do this risk their careers. It's as simple as that.
And it's not even doctors. I mean, even within the nursing profession, there is um, a large sort of a significant number of nursing academics and practicing nurses who will ostracize you. And I've been ostracized even within my own working department,
Shocking.
for the fact that we're even willing to consider looking at these things. Um, you know, it has a knock-on effect all over the place, and a lot of nurses were. In fact, we know from the Thirlwell inquiry that there was at least one nurse who had volunteered to come forward and speak on Letby's behalf, who was told by the hospital, it was made quite clear to her that if she did, it was a career-ending move.
Now, one of the terrible things about this Lucy Letby case is that anyone who has challenged the evidence or challenged the way that the mainstream media has covered Letby is immediately branded a conspiracy theorist. And Peter Hitchens, who's the contrarian journalist who has been campaigning on this for a very long time, spoke out about this recently.
I was intrigued by Dan Hodges' piece today, in which he says these words: "The campaign to free baby killer Lucy Letby relies on a crazy conspiracy theory too far." Is he calling you a conspiracy theorist?
He can call me what he likes. I decline to join in this name-calling. I treat my opponents in the Letby case with respect. I spend my entire time thinking about it, keeping very much in mind the possibility that I may be wrong and they may be right. I have to keep my mind open. There's no point in debating with people who you've already decided are fools. I think that the campaign to have the Letby case re-examined is legitimate and strongly based on facts and on study of the trial itself. And I think the more that we go into this, the more we will learn that it's an extraordinary trial. Even those involved in it concede it's an extraordinary trial. It's quite unusual for anybody to be convicted of murder without any objective evidence whatsoever. Not merely that they did the crime, but that there was any crime at all. It's all been a matter of opinion. I have an article in the Spectator today in which I point out that this is the whole case was hypothesis.
Yeah, I actually have direct experience of this personally, because in last year, June of 2023, I was due to give a lecture to a big NHS conference on data analytics, and my seminar, my lecture was cancelled at the last minute. They cancelled me, apparently because I'd also been raising questions about the safety and efficacy of the COVID vaccine. So that was the reason why they cancelled me. And I did a freedom of information request to get information about, more details about why they cancelled me. And as a result of that, the Free Speech Union took up my case and submitted a judicial review of this cancellation. It turned out we were too late for the judicial review, but we did get the NHS lawyers' response to the claim. And one of the points they raised in that was that I was not only an anti-vaxxer, but I was a conspiracy theorist because I had raised concerns about, I had actually raised the possibility of Lucy Letby's innocence. So they were citing that as evidence that I was a conspiracy theorist and someone who deserved to be cancelled from this conference.
Which is extraordinary, by the way, because, I mean, look, I hate the term conspiracy theory anyway, because if someone calls me a conspiracy theorist these days, I don't give a damn. Look at how many so-called conspiracy theories have come true over the past decade. But let's put that to one side. The crazy thing about calling someone like you, Norman, a conspiracy theorist is literally your entire career is about looking at evidence. And the thing that I think shocks a lot of people when it comes to the Letby case, because I'm the first to admit, initially I bought into the narrative because I just assumed that if they were putting her on the front page of the newspapers, calling her the angel of death, they better damn well have some evidence. And it was only once I got through the trial to actually realize there is no evidence. And I know that sounds extreme, but it's true, isn't it, Norm? There is actually no hard evidence to convict Lucy Letby. She was
Right.
she was sent to jail for the rest of her life on circumstantial evidence, which is a very different thing.
Let me make it clear that I've never commented on the supposed clinical evidence in the case. My concern has always been on the statistical and
Yes.
probabilistic evidence. And for that, there is no evidence. All of those claims about these clusters, these sequences being, too strange to have happened by coincidence, that is all complete nonsense. There was no spike. And there's no statistical significance to the sequence of events at which Lucy Letby was present.
Scott, what about the fact that this method of death is actually really complicated, right? And again, there is no evidence of Lucy Letby ever researching how you would kill a baby by inserting oxygen into them. Can you just explain that a little bit for me?
Right. So I think the best thing I can do is to point to an analogy. If you recall, the first baby that this was mentioned in was for baby A. Now, in the case of baby A, it was claimed that baby A was in a room with at least 3 other babies in incubators, with at least 2 other babies in incubators. So you had another baby to the left of baby A and another baby sort of across the room. You've got a situation where there were at least 5 staff members in that room, including Lucy Letby, and a 6th staff member who was the ward manager, who acknowledges in her testimony she was standing outside of the door, and the door has a glass panel in it. Lucy is supposed to have injected air into the umbilical venous catheter of this baby, or potentially into the nasogastric tube. However, as one of the midwives that I work with pointed out to me, she bought me the 2 types of syringes that they have on the neonatal unit and sat them down in front of me. Now, they come in sterile packaging and they're irradiated in that sterile packaging. But what's interesting about it is if you pick that packaging up and try and open it, it's a cellophane-based plastic. So it makes a lot of noise when you attempt to open it up. So in order for her to have opened it up, now they keep these neonatal units with slightly lower lighting than a normal ward, and they usually keep fairly quiet. They talk softly within the unit because you don't want loud noises to disturb the babies. The babies are in incubators that are enclosed, so she would have to have pulled out one of these syringes, taken it out of the crinkly packaging, while there was 2 doctors and another nurse sitting at a computer to her right. So she had a nurse to her left dealing with a baby in the next incubator. There was 2 doctors in the room who were dealing with the 3rd baby, and then there was the nurse Taylor, who she'd taken handover from, who was sitting at a computer about 3.5 feet to her right. She's got to have taken this out of the cellophane wrap, drawn the air up, opened up the lid of the incubator, and then reached in to inject it into whichever of the tubes that was supposedly the one that she used. And some of the evidence is contradictory as to which tube Dewey Evans claims it was used in and which tube some of the other doctors claim it was used in. There's no consistent there's a lot of inconsistencies across all of these babies, but there's no consistency as to where they think this air was administered in many cases. So how did she do that in a room where there's 4 other members of staff plus the nurse manager looking in through the door?
It's farcical. So the point that you're making is that it would not only be a very, how am I trying to put it, a death that would be very technically difficult to implement, even for a medical professional. Actually, practically, it's farcical to suggest that she did this multiple times, given the vast number of people in the room. And then the other critical point, I think, too, Scott, which again is not focused on enough in the mainstream media, is that, of course, all of these babies went through autopsies. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that at the autopsy stage, the coroner never suggested that the cause of death was as a result of what Lucy Letby has been convicted for.
And that is correct. It almost seems comical, this idea that you've got about sort of 15 babies who've died in this hospital over about an 18-month period. You've got death certificates for each of these babies. The death certificates give causes. Some of them are congenital causes. Some of them are, the midwives call it a failure to thrive. For example, the baby just was not compatible with life. It was too premature. But you've got some of them with very, very clinical causes of death that have nothing to do with the things that Lucy's been accused of doing. But what I find comical is this idea that simply because somebody wants to say that Lucy's guilty of doing something, we overturn just that subset of deaths that are in that chart, that have got the X's against them in that chart. We overturn those death certificates, but we leave all of the other ones who died during the same period, which is an almost similar number. We leave all of those and let their death certificates stand.
Norman,
Nobody at any point thought to look, is there a cause of death that more closely fits with a larger number of this population than, they've looked for something that is completely imbalanced.
and Norman, given everything that you
Yep.
do is so evidence-based, are you concerned about what the jury was told? But first, every day subtle changes occur in our bodies, often going unnoticed. It's called inflammaging, a chronic low-grade inflammation that deteriorates our health as we get older. It's more than just a sign of aging, it's a key contributor to health issues like cardiovascular diseases, dementia and depression, and physical decline. It continuously weakens the body's resilience, turning minor infections severe and impacting mental health and cognitive function. Inflammaging significantly diminishes both quality of life and independence. Proper diet, exercise, and sleep can only get you so far. But the good news is, I've got a solution. It's why I take Clean Bean by Verso. Now, Clean Bean is amazing. It contains ingredients targeted to fight off and help prevent inflammaging. Research shows that these ingredients clean out damaged cells in the body that affect healthy cells, reduce inflammation, protect against oxidative stress, and improve conditions like cardiovascular diseases and neurological disorders. After taking Clean Bean for many months, I've noticed less joint pain, increased energy, better mood, clearer skin. I can think better, I don't get sick as often. These are all benefits of reducing inflammation. Plus, Verso ensures transparency and quality by publishing third-party testing results for each batch they produce, so you know you're getting what you paid for. Click the link in the description in YouTube or Rumble, or head on over to buy.ver.so. Use the coupon code OUTSPOKEN when you check out. You will save 15% on your first order. So I'm just going to repeat the address: www.buy.ver.so/outspoken. Use the coupon code OUTSPOKEN. But now, back to the show.
Yeah, because it goes back to this point about the claim that the statistical evidence was not in any way the driver for this. They claim that it was all based on the clinical evidence, not statistical evidence. And yet it was very clear that that chart had a profound effect on the jury. So whatever they might say about this being driven by the statistical evidence, I think driven by the clinical evidence, I think that statistical evidence had a major impact.
And
there's just
Norman,
one other
what
point
about the door swipe too? The swipe
there was
card,
also
because the CPS have since the trial admitted that the swipe card data was inaccurate.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the thing, the chart in itself, there are so many incompletenesses and inconsistencies in that chart. So when I said about when you look at the full data in context, you take account of the fact that even the where they were saying that Lucy Letby was present, for example, I mean, Scott can maybe clarify this, but that if, for example, she had been present in the shift before one of these events happened, they counted her as being present. But if there were other nurses who were present in the shift before, they weren't included as being present in the chart. So that's another inconsistency which exaggerates this apparently, this coincidental evidence. And there's another thing which I think also, following on from what Scott was just saying about the nature of these, or also was said earlier about these babies being particularly at risk. Another thing which is not widely discussed is the fact that 9 of the babies which were on that chart were either twins or triplets. So there was actually 3 sets of twins and 1 set of triplets. And we know not only is the risk of risk of death to those to twins and triplets higher than normal babies, but also if one has a congenital defect, then it's much more likely that one of their siblings will as well. So these also are other confounding factors of the type that Scott was talking about.
Got it. Scott, can I talk to you about the note? Because, again, certainly in the media, this was considered the slam dunk, right? Okay, well, she's guilty. A note was discovered. Within the note, she said, I am evil, I did this. We have since learned that actually the note was not presented in an accurate way to the jury by Lucy Letby's defense. God knows why. I find that very difficult to get my head around. But in fact, this was a note that she was encouraged to write, or it was basically like when you, part of your therapy is you put all of your thoughts down. And of course, some of her thoughts were talking about the fact that she was being discriminated against and it was victimization and that she had never done this.
There's a couple of interesting things about the whole note situation. As you suggest, there's the fact that and it's something that one of the classes I went to in law school told us, you should never ever encourage a client to use the social care or support services provided by their employer, because then the clinician, so the psychologist in this case, giving that support is conflicted because they've got a duty of care to the patient, but they've also got a duty to the person, their employer, that's paying the bill. So you've got a situation where Lucy's been, because she was having a stressful time at work, she's been sent to the psychologist at the hospital, and that psychologist has suggested to her to, keep a diary or make some notes or do something in order to, get your thoughts out on paper. And at least, if it's out on paper, you can sort of, you can work through it. And so that appears to be what's happened. Now, the other thing that you correctly point out is that it was misrepresented as evidence of guilt, which is a similar thing that happened to the diaries in cases like the Lucia de Burke case. It was also something seen in the Kathy Folbig case in Australia, which has now been overturned and she's been released from jail as well. Is this idea that because somebody wrote a particular set of words in their diary, that means they must be guilty. When often what it is, it's that thing of, when everybody keeps telling you you're wrong, you eventually write down, I must be wrong, it's my fault. It's a psychological issue. And then the third thing that you allude to that's correct as well, and it's an issue for a whole lot of things that happened during that first trial, is why didn't defense counsel get up and put the record straight and tell the court, well, actually, these notes were written as part of an employer-supported, mental health care situation. They were not written by Lucy just off of her own bat at home. And so therefore, what is in them is the type of content. There was no information at all presented during the trial to say that Lucy had even been through these counselling sessions.
No, indeed. I think certainly there were some serious issues with her defense. But one of them, I guess, too, and again, I think this is a really important point that isn't covered, is that there are loads of reasons why medical experts didn't want to give evidence in the trial, because if you support someone like Lucy Letby, I don't know if you want to take this one on, Norman, but
yep,
you effectively get turned on by the medical establishment. So it's such a big risk. And that's why some of the medical experts simply were not prepared to give evidence on behalf of Lucy Letby. Do you think that is a fair contention?
Oh, yeah. One of the people you should maybe speak to about this and who's gone on the record about it is Wayne Squire, who was famously effectively excommunicated because she had given evidence which was against the existing, let's say, the accepted narrative on shaken baby syndrome, because we actually worked with her on that, and she's made it clear that it's an incredible danger to clinicians for coming out against the accepted orthodoxy. I mean, we've also seen it as well, incidentally, with those clinicians who've come out strongly in public against the safe and effective COVID narrative. It's the same thing. So these people, any doctors who are prepared to do this, risk their careers. It's as simple as that.
And it's not even doctors. I mean, even within the nursing profession, there is a large sort of a significant number of nursing academics and practicing nurses who will ostracize you. And I've been ostracized even within my own working department for the fact that, we're even willing to consider looking at these things. It has a knock-on effect all over the place. And a lot of nurses were, in fact, we know from the Thirlwell inquiry that there was at least one nurse who had volunteered to come forward and speak on Letby's behalf, who was told by the hospital, it was made quite clear to her that if she did, it was a career-ending move.
Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are. You can subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and I've put some of the links in the show notes below this video. Keep watching our Outspoken clips to support this independent news venture with no spin, no bias, and no censorship, unlike the MSM. Most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you.